Hey y'all, Tommy Gerlach here, accepting the challenge given to me by my friends at Make War Men's Ministries. The challenge is to share public my story of when and how my life was changed eternally and forever. My parents were divorced when I was 3 years old, and I only got to see my dad a few times a year until I was a teenager. It was in my early teenage years that my dad began to ask to see myself and my younger brother more often. And during those visits, he would tell us, after really living his life not even acknowledging God or that he exists, he began reading the Bible, and in the coming months, he was born into a new life by accepting Jesus as Savior, and his life was radically changed. Well, I was raised in the Lutheran Church and always believed in God that they talked about in the story of Christmas and Easter. I was confirmed in the church, but no one in my confirmation class, or maybe even in the church, really cared about God or had a relationship with him. But during that time, we found out the pastor was molesting one of the boys of one of the families of the church, and it really didn't have anything to do with it. During my later teenage years, my dad invited me to his church, and I could immediately tell something was very different. More striking, though, was the pastor of the church and his passion for what he was saying and how clear and easy it was to understand. Those times made an impact in my life, and the gospel message of really me being a natural born sinner without needing any practice, Jesus being divine born, living life with no sin, but willing to be beat to death for my sin, and 3 days later, overcoming my sin and overcoming death and walking out of the grave. It just began to blow my mind. It was becoming pretty clear that at some day on my side of life, Jesus would need a response from me. About 4 years later, I was newly married to my awesome wife, and she continued to suggest that we go to church. We went to a local Lutheran church a few times, but I knew right away in my mind and in my spirit that wasn't the church for me. The church I knew we needed to seek out required commitment, and I really wasn't ready to make that commitment. But I did one night about 30 years ago, drifting off to sleep next to my wife in January of 1992, really just pondering my existence and asking the same questions that we all need to ask. Where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? What's the purpose of my life? I told God in an instant just to take my life, use it for what you want. Come on in and have your way. Immediately, I knew in my spirit that a major transaction had taken place. The next morning, walking out the door, everything looked different. Everything sounded different. Everything tasted different. My swearing completely went away that day on the job site. I told my wife that week we needed to find a church. After 30 years, the world has changed and became more complicated with more chaos, more secularism, more injustice. And the news 24 hours a day in living color reminds us of the sin-sick condition of mankind and the human soul. But I can tell you that I live each day with absolutely no fear of death. I'm amazed at the life of my family and how God is working in it, in myself and those around me. But your question might be, well, Tom, how do you know that God is even real? My challenge to you is to pull out your ID and look at your birth date. Your birth date is dated off the birth, death, and resurrection of Jesus. You're already in history. His story. What you gonna do about it?